Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to Saturday afternoon's bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to Saturday afternoon's bonus upload, shall we?
Today's first encounter. This happened to my Aunt Donna, my brother Eric, and I, late one summer day. I have to say this, since this happened, we have not been back to fish in that place. It was summer, school was out, Eric and I were bored out of our minds. Our parents had divorced, and at that time we were living with our grandmother and Aunt Donna. We loved living with them because we always got our way. We were outside moping around when Eric said that he thinks going fishing would be a good idea right now. I smile and say, okay, let's go ask Donna to go. So we find her and tell her the idea. She agrees. Fishing would be a great idea. And that night we would come back and have a fish fry outside. We run to gather all our things. Donna helps us load everything on the four-wheeler. I jump on the back. Eric gets on the front rack and Donna's driving. We set out. Now, where we live, you don't have to go very far, maybe about an hour to where we call Gully Hole. I have no idea where that name came from, but it's a sandy little river bank with a little pond of water that the river had created. Honestly, it's quite beautiful and peaceful there, but in order to get there, we have to ride an hour beside the train tracks. Did we care at the time? No way. It was our favorite spot to fish. We get there and set out our poles. Everything's going great, but I get impatient. Get up and start collecting seashells. I wade in the river away from Donna and Eric. All my attention is on the water, looking down in the sand and finding odd shells. Without knowing it, I get pretty far away from them. And when I look up the other side of the river, I see something. Whatever I'm looking at, it's on two legs like a man, but it's hairy like a bear. I couldn't quite make it out because it kept to the shadows behind the trees. Then I feel a hand on my shoulder, sending me 10 feet into the air with fright. But I don't scream. It's Eric, and he must have seen the thing too, for him to come to where I was. We stare at it for a while. I ask him what he thinks it could be. He shakes his head and says he doesn't know. This thing must be getting impatient because it starts to throw rocks at us. There was no way the rocks could hit us being all the way across the river, but it clearly wanted us to go. My brother gets an idea that maybe we should back up the shore a little ways. I agree, and we make our way back, but we do not take our eyes off this thing. No sooner do we make it back to where Donna is, the thing comes out. It comes out on the riverbank, and we see it clear as day. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Donna was in complete shock looking at this thing. It walks to the riverbank, bends down, and starts drinking water. I look over at my brother, but he's gone. I start looking for him. Then I find him a couple yards downriver, but he has his rifle aimed at this thing. I panic and start running towards him. He's getting ready to shoot when I jerk the gun away from him, causing him to miss his shot. The gun goes off and falls to the ground. You can hear the shot echoing all around us, and I can see Eric is mad. I look toward where the creature was, but it's gone and I feel relieved. Then we heard boom, boom, boom. Something was hitting something. We look around us at this beating sound. It starts to slowly grow all around us. Boom, boom, boom. It was behind us, in front of us, beside us at this point, and I was scared. Without saying a word, my brother bends down and picks up the gun, and we hightail it back to where Donna is. She's already packing everything up. Now it doesn't take long to throw everything back onto the four-wheeler. We got on, and as we are turning around, we hear something running in the woods all around us. I scream, "Go, go, go, please, get me out of here." And at this point, I'm crying like a 2-year-old. Donna throws the gas to the four-wheeler, nearly losing me, and we go a bat out of hell down the tracks. We get home and we tell our grandmother what happened. She sits all three of us down and tells us it's quite an unbelievable story, and that we probably saw a bear or a mountain lion. We look at each other in silence. We all three agree that if we go telling people what we saw and saying it was Bigfoot, that people are going to think we're crazy. So for years, this story hasn't been spoken until now. I know what we saw that day, and it was real. No matter what anyone says, Bigfoot is real, and I hope that I never see one again. Today's second encounter. I'm currently living in western Kentucky in a very woodsy part. I was out walking my dog before bed, and out of nowhere he sits down and starts howling. I had absolutely no clue what his issue was, but I could sense there was something not quite right. I decided to head back to the house, and I felt hyper aware of everything. Aware of every crunch of the branch, every rock I kicked, and every step that I took. I had a flashlight because it's pretty dark out where I am. And I shined the light into the woods just out of curiosity. A pair of eyes reflect back at me, so I figured it was just a coyote and to keep moving. The next morning, I wake up pretty early and I hear the sound of weeping coming from outside in the direction of the woods. Of course, I'm freaked out, so I look out the window. There's a deer standing in the field leading into the woods, but something just seemed off about this deer. Its eyes looked funky. It looked like it was almost bulky. The weirdest part was its legs were mismatched. It looked almost as if its front legs were backward, the joints being in the wrong spot and bending the opposite way of a normal leg. My first thought was chronic wasting disease, but it didn't look frail as a deer with chronic wasting disease. The deer has returned multiple times since the incident, and I've even seen it stand on 2 legs just to stare at me. I still hear the weeping sounds coming from the woods in the early hours of the morning. Around 2 through 5 a.m. is where I hear them the loudest. Today's third encounter. So basically, my fiancé doesn't really get freaked out about a lot of stuff. But he went outside to smoke, and we live by a creek in western Pennsylvania. He said that he heard a cooing noise, but like a purr as well. He said whatever kind of thing this was, it sounded huge, and it was splashing all through the water. And when he heard it getting closer to our front porch, I heard him screaming, "Fuck no, absolutely not. Nope." I mean, my fiancé is a pretty big guy, 6 foot 210. Nothing really scares him. But he's never heard anything like that. We've had weird things happen on several occasions. And I've also seen some really tall things moving through the trees at about 1,000 feet outside of our property. We live in a wooded area down by a creek that frequented by geese. But even I heard the noise he claims that he heard, and it's followed by loud crashing noises, branches breaking, loud stomps. Now, we know what mountain lions sound like, bobcats, bears, all that stuff. This is just indescribable. And it's really starting to burden our anxiety, especially when our house is dead silent at night and we hear shuffling and these noises outside all night. Today's fourth encounter. I was riding my bike through a graveyard when I was maybe 11 years old. I was dumb and laughed at a few gravestones. The next day, I was home alone and decided to go to the store to grab some food and snacks. I was very sure no one was home and that my window was closed, but when I got home, my window was open. I really didn't think much of it until I went to sleep. I woke up when it was still dark outside, and I felt like something was watching me. I looked to my door and saw this grayish creature that had no facial features except a nose and black eyes walking on four legs. It looked at me and climbed through my window. I thought it was just a dream because I didn't believe or never really heard of anything paranormal or supernatural happening around here. I must have closed the window because it was closed when I woke up again. I started getting into paranormal stuff about a year after that happened. I wasn't scared about demons or any other kind of creatures except when I saw a picture of a skinwalker. Now, I've seen this creature a couple of times after that. I don't feel like it's dangerous. It just feels curious. Today's fifth encounter. I've got something that's been weighing heavily on my shoulder for about a month now. I'm sorry if I make a mistake. English is not my first language. It was the night of our national day here in my country. After having a nice meal with some friends, my boyfriend asked me to go check on one of his friends. Father kind of son relationship since he's not really feeling well. He has heart conditions. So on our way home, we stopped at his place at around 10 at night. We get there, drink a beer, chat with him, his wife, and stepson for a while. After about 45 minutes, we're about ready to leave when we hear this crazy howling sound coming from outside of the house. His stepson opens the door and asks what's going on, but he doesn't even have time to finish his sentence, and this man just falls through the door covered in blood. I mean, dark, dried blood, but so much. I thought he had dark skin tones since there was so much covering him of the dried blood. It took me about 30 seconds, which seemed like 5 minutes, but only 30, realizing it was dried blood coming from these gigantic gashes and slashes that he had on his head. I must say that it was terrifying to look at him. He had 3 deep gashes on his head. The biggest was in the middle from his forehead to the back of his head, 2 inches wide at the largest. So the guy just screams and yells and falls to the ground, and everyone freezes like in the movies. I jump on the guy, instinct kicked in, and we brought him out, me and my boyfriend, without looking back. We were in the car in less than a minute for sure. I can't explain what went through our heads. But all I knew is if that we didn't make it to the hospital right away, he was not going to survive. I sat him in the front passenger seat so I could keep him awake while my boyfriend drove. We called emergency the minute we got into the road, so they could send an ambulance to meet us on our way to the hospital. The agent on the phone started asking me to pull the car over to the side of the highway and wait for the ambulance to arrive, which we did not do since this guy was friggin' dying in my arms. We get to the hospital before the ambulance and police, but as soon as we get there, medics, who were already outside, came and helped him right away. The police arrived at the hospital and took our information and what had happened. What happened next? The guy we brought to the hospital fell into a coma after 30 minutes there, before the police could interrogate him. From that moment on, the police started procedures for a homicide investigation, and we were then considered as prime suspects / witnesses of a possible murder or attack. They finally let us go home at around 4 in the morning, and came back the next day to ask further questions and to let us know that they knew we were not related to the crime or incident. We never heard any more information about this guy after the hospital. Today's final encounter. This story I have not thought about in a couple of years. A little bit about myself, though. I grew up in a small town just outside of the Pine Barrens in the state of New Jersey in the south. There's a huge difference between North and South Jersey, with South Jersey being the much nicer part. The Pine Barren is a huge national forest that is not very populated with a few roads. Thankfully, I was on the edge of it, but you couldn't help but listen to the stories about the Jersey Devil. I didn't believe in it then, but it always sent chills down my back. The story goes that a mother who lived in a small house in the Pine Barrens in the 1700s had 12 children, and when she found out she was going to have the 13th, she cursed that child and called it the devil. The baby was born but came out as a monster with hooves, a horse-like body and wings with glowing red eyes. The thing flew out of the house and was never seen again. But over the past 250 years, people have claimed to see a horrible creature in the woods, attacking livestock or hear its blood-curdling scream. Several people have actually gone missing, but I was a skeptic to all of this. Just a good story to scare people, really. But anyway, enough of that, back to the story. So, back in September of 2014, in December, I was 16 years old, a junior in high school. My friends and I planned to have a night game of airsoft deep in my woods, where we usually would play in the day. Airsoft is similar to paintball, but better in my opinion. So I had 18 people, including myself, at my house, getting ready to go back. As a precaution, we taped flashlights to our guns so we can see where we are going and all of that. We started our 30-minute walk along a small path in the woods that eventually led us to this opening of dirt. It's sort of like a square with low land in the clearing, and you have to walk up out of the clearing to get to the woods. It's topped with dirt on the edges and tall grass in the center. Anyway, it's already pitch black outside with no moon since it's a cloudy night. The chill in the air gave me a creepy vibe being back there in the dark. It's one thing to describe the creepiness of the woods at night. It's another thing to actually experience it. The tall, thick trees made it even darker, and never in my life have I had been in such darkness. But it was kind of cool. Holding my airsoft rifle in my hand gave me some comfort. It may just shoot plastic pellets, but these things can seriously hurt someone without proper precautions. We finally reached to where we were going to play, and it gets a little brighter because of the clearing, but still eerily dark. We quickly finished getting ready, split up our teams, and went to each side of the clearing, what we call a pit. We played about 2 hours, and it passed by. We were having so much fun. Being decked out in tactical vest, urban camo, a black bandana, long black cargo pants, really made me hard to spot without a flashlight on. It was about 11, and we were getting ready to play our last game. It was going to be teams of 2 guys, making 9 teams, starting all over the pit. When you shoot someone, you tag them, and they're on your team. It went like that all the way until only one person remained against 17 of us. Keep in mind that we do play into the sides of the woods as well. I was on the team with my friend Mike, and we started a little back into the woods. I forgot to mention earlier that we all had walkie-talkies, but only used them for emergencies. So the game starts, and Mike and I decide to hide a little bit further back into the woods, so we'd be the last team of 2 against 16. Hearing the yelling and shooting up ahead was really creepy. We were lying down facing the pit. 20 minutes passed by, and things got quiet. Mike and I thought they had all shot each other, and it was us against them. We were on alert now, waiting for them, as we waited with our guns aimed, scanning the area. I faintly heard a rustle behind us. I quickly spun around onto my back to try to see who was sneaking up on us. Nothing. Remember, our flashlights are turned off, so our eyes have adjusted pretty well to the darkness, but it's still pretty dark. I keep looking behind us, and there is except another noise, except it's even louder this time. Now Mike has turned around as well, with me, looking in the same direction. You can hear the leaves rustling and branches snapping here and there. I was confused at first, but that's when we heard the footsteps. It was strange, very strange. These weren't quiet, light footsteps like a person. These were deep and very heavy. Whatever it was, they had to be friggin' huge. I looked over at Mike, who was already looking at me. I could tell he's a little startled and shaken as well. Being out deep in the woods at night in the darkness is terrifying with just one person. But we waited. As scared as we were curious. Was it a deer? It couldn't have been. I thought for a second about how a bear was spotted around here last year, but I brushed that off, knowing there's almost no bear in southern New Jersey. So what could it be? The footsteps had to be no more than 50 yards away. It was damn close. I told Mike to stand up and get ready to run. But what I did next, I look back on being a terrible idea. I said in a loud whisper, "Guys, is that you? Who's back there?" No response, but the sound stopped. About a minute of footsteps approaching us, and nothing. It was dead silent. After another minute passed by with no movement or sounds. But then, just as I was about to tell Mike we should leave, that's when I saw it. 2 glowing, piercing red eyes. And they were friggin' huge. They had to be at least 10 feet above the ground. It was now much closer to us, maybe 35 yards. I swear I could hear it breathe out very deeply. The red eyes just stared right at us, not moving at all. I was frozen in fear. Mike was in shock and was literally shaking so badly. I remember him telling me that he was a believer in the Jersey Devil. My mind had stopped working. All I could do was stare back at those glowing red eyes, being scared, too scared to do anything. Chills ran over my body. My eyes were as wide as they could be. About 30 seconds passed of silence and staring. All of a sudden, it starts to move again, and not away from us. This was no person or a bear. Its footsteps were unbelievably deep. I would have guessed it to be at least a couple of 100 pounds, maybe even 1,000. I don't know. As it started moving towards us, my eyes filled with fear and panic and tears. Mike started to sob as well. I should have ran when I saw those eyes. I had to do something. I remembered my flashlight. It was powerful. With my arm shaking so badly, I pointed my rifle right at the eyes and turned on the flashlight. I literally dropped my gun with the light still on. It has the head of a friggin' horse. At least that's what it looked like from afar for a few seconds. I couldn't believe what I saw. Suddenly I hear the loudest scream I had ever heard in my life. It sounded like a loud wail. This blood-curdling scream did it for me. I grabbed Mike by the arm and ran the hell back to the pit. As we start running, I swear in my life that I could very clearly hear loud, deep sounds running after us. I screamed like a little kid and ran as fast as I could with Mike in front of me. We hit the trail, not caring about my airsoft gun. I didn't even realize we didn't see any of the others along the way. The run felt like forever. I didn't stop or look back. I was only focused on getting back to my house with Mike. Finally, we made it back to my street and came out of the woods like madmen. We saw all of the guys just sitting down at the edge of my street talking. They were silent when they saw us come running out. They told me they thought Mike and I had already gone back, that they had been trying to call us for about an hour. The walkie-talkie didn't work due to the vast distance, and all of the trees. I had to catch my breath before I could say anything. They all looked startled and pretty shaken as well. After a good 2 minutes of lying down and drinking all the water we had on us, I finally explained to them what happened. I told them everything, the sounds, the eyes, the friggin' head, the screams. They were dead silent the whole time I was talking, which is pretty unusual for them. They all looked really tensed up and frightened now. Some of the guys said earlier in the game, in the beginning, they heard some pretty strange noises out in the woods back at the pit, but didn't think anything of it. Was this thing stalking us the whole time we were back there? One of my friends, whose name I'll leave out since I don't think he'd like it if I said it, told me that as they were sitting here talking, he heard out in the distance towards the pit a faint, loud scream, but he couldn't make out any details as it was too far. It had to be the same scream Mike and I heard from that creature. Mike finally said something, and those 2 words he said with such certainty and fear, I still remember like it was yesterday. Jersey Devil. It shook all of us. They believed me and Mike when they saw the fear in our eyes. We all agreed not to tell anyone about this. From where we lived, we'd sound like idiots, making fools of ourselves. We didn't have any proof other than some of the neighbors hearing strange noises. As for my airsoft gun, it took me a week to gain the confidence to go back there and get it. I went by myself, which I know is stupid, but I went during the day. I knew right where I left it, but when I got there, all I found was the back part of the stock. I could tell that it had been ripped in half, which is pretty hard to do considering it's fully metal with some plastic. I didn't know what to think. I know I had left the flashlight on when we ran, but it was nowhere to be found. I don't know what tore my gun in half, but I do know not many animals live in the Pine Barrens that can do it. Unfortunately, I forgot to take a picture of the gun. There is no way in hell I'm going back out there again. None of us have ever returned to that pit. Mike was pretty shaken up for a couple of days, and we did not tell our parents. Mike and I have moved on with our lives and are still best friends, and for 3 years never told anyone about it. Every now and then, when he and I hung out, we talked about that night. That cold, chilly night in December of 2014. What happened that night has turned me into a believer. Just saying it makes me shake. I know there will be a couple people who diss this story or call it bullshit. And I used to be like them. But there's no doubt. I know what Mike and I saw. I know what happened. I sometimes look out in the woods from my window at the old trail that leads to the pit, and all I can think of is never again will I tread down that trail knowing what's out there. I've not returned to that pit ever since I went back to get my gun, but I know somewhere out in the Pine Barrens exists a horrifying creature that I never want to see again.
Well, there you have it, folks. Today's Saturday afternoon bonus, getting us that much closer to Saturday Nightmares live from New York, which I hope to see you all there. I'd also like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that keeps the channel growing and going, and honestly what gives people like us a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. These events are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. And until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.